where Kamala Harris has chosen her VP pick. All the speculation is over, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you're on the edge of your seats. Not. And the man's name is Tim Walz. He is the governor of Minnesota. And unlike most VP picks, where the presidential nominee is looking for someone who's complementary but a little bit different, Kamala Harris seems to have just picked a white male version of herself. He is also a big fan of socialism. Here he is telling you so.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Neighborliness. The regime that's responsible for the deaths of over 94 million people worldwide, and that's a conservative estimate. This guy just calls it progressive values. It's just neighborliness. Yeah, okay.
Well, you might have to eat your neighbour at some point of socialism. Like it is neighbourly.
That would be very neighbourly indeed. You can eat me to survive.
But it's usually
a little longer.
Which would concern you.
The animals are the first to go.
My two little boys are being locked away in the basement tonight.
The animals are the first to go. But this guy, you may remember him from back in the day of the Black Lives Matter riots. Now, we talk about these all the time here, but for Americans, they were the worst riots the nation had seen in decades. Now, we know Kamala Harris was very busy at the time backing in a bailout fund for the rioters who were looting and mobbing their way throughout the country. Here was Tim Walz as the governor of Minnesota addressing his people saying, you know what? This is just what happens when there's not enough equality in our society. And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing. While he's talking, notice the footage on your right, which is the vestiges that were left in the wake of these rioters in his state of Minnesota.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
You can feel a sense of, feel the optimism, baby. Check out this image of a police station in the middle of Minneapolis being burnt to the ground. Check out the mob. These were the kind of rioters in the capital of his state, and that is what the governor told his people. Oh, you can just feel the positivity. Change is coming. Isn't it wonderful? And we all know where this guy stands on immigration. He's no better than failed border czar Kamala Harris herself. Here he is signing into legislation driver's licenses for illegal aliens.
It's done.
A packed room at the St. Paul Armory erupted after the governor's signature made driver's license for all the law of the land.
So while she's facilitating over 10 million illegal aliens just pouring across the Mexican border, he's making sure that they can drive around the country like any national. Great teamwork, you two. This is going to be a blast. And of course, you wouldn't be a progressive governor, would you, unless you looked at your state flag and said, we need to make a change. This isn't inclusive enough. And that's exactly what Tim Walz did earlier this year.
All right, ready. Whoa, wait a minute. There, that's better.
Except that it's not better. I mean, that is an objectively ugly flag. Can you imagine all the Minnesotans being like, I'm sorry, that was so bright and colourful. It looked like some sort of seal. And he gets up and replaces it. This is the big new reveal of his U-Butte DEI flag for the state. It's objectively ugly.
Well, you remember the Westboro Baptist Church and one of their sayings, if we are to slightly change it, God hates flags. Well, he'd certainly hate that one, I reckon. I mean, seriously, what is Kamala Harris thinking? Like, she had in Josh Shapiro, sure, a reasonable newbie in terms of his political career. He was only elected governor last year, but he ticked a lot of boxes if you're trying to present a product to the American people that says, you know, we're not a radical left outfit here. Because we know her record. We know that she was, as has been described many times, the most liberal senator in the United States. And so if you want people to come out and vote for you, because of course voting not being compulsory in the US, you have to give everyone some kind of encouragement to come and choose you. And that might simply be that I don't want Donald Trump to win, so I'm going to go and vote for Kamala and her pick for VP to make sure they get over the line to stop Donald Trump. Now, you may well be a very moderate voter. You may even be a Republican never-Trumper. But then when you look at what you're getting here, which is two radicals, why would you do it? The only reason I can think of that she didn't pick Shapiro, who is more moderate than her, is because he is Jewish and he has voiced his support for Israel, which would have caused her some grief in the left of the Democratic Party. But also, you look at traditionally, Jewish people, particularly large Jewish donors in the United States, have been Democrats. So it would have been a great play to that section of the Democratic Party. It would have been a more moderate candidate who helps, you know, wash her craziness away a little bit, in the same way that Trump picked Pence because he was a much more middle-of-the-road choice, and why he's picked Vance because, you know, he's not quite Donald Trump and he plays to the working class base, etc. She's not picked anyone here in Walz that seems to add anything to her campaign. I don't get it.
I think it's kind of hilarious. I mean, of all people, Kamala Harris picked a stale, pale male. I mean, she spent the last couple of weeks bagging out white males across America for being Republicans typically, and then she goes and chooses one.
Well, you know, it's often said that women just want to hear the same thing said back to them in a deeper voice. Well, that's exactly what he'll be able to do.
That's so not true. That would bore me no end.
He'll just say what she wants.
You're a brave man.
That would bore me no end. I'd be like, do you have any original thought?
But with regards to
the
image we showed of the Minnesota police station on fire, there was an interview with Tim Walz's wife where she talked about how during the BLM riots, she made sure that the house's windows were open so the fumes of the fires from the riots could come into the house and they could connect with what was happening in the streets, because this was a pivotal moment in America's history. That's kind of sick. The report is that Kamala Harris chose this guy because they had good rapport. So it wasn't really about his policies or what he could add. She just felt like he was a good guy. I guess he was the only one who she felt would agree with him on everything, which might show how stupid he is. But you've now got presented to the American people laughable and affable. That's your options. And he's about as affable as Karl Marx. He makes Bernie Sanders look positively moderate. This guy's so left-leaning. This would be about the most left-leaning ticket America's probably ever been presented with.
Yeah, sure. It's quite incredible. And of course, what you've been hearing from the Democrats is that J.D. Vance is apparently crazy and he's mad and all this sort of stuff, right? So the Trump campaign has taken that and gone, well, you think J.D. Vance is mad? Just take a look at this Walz bloke. They put this out quick smart.
What could be weirder than signing a bill into law that requires schools to stock tampons in boys' bathrooms? Or weirder than signing legislation allowing minors to receive sex change operations? Try electing the man who signed those bills, Vice President of the United States. Enter Chief Weirdo Tim Walz. As governor of Minnesota, Walz supported legislation that endangers minors, hurts women, and puts radical ideology ahead of common sense. Now Kamala wants Walz to enforce those laws on a national scale. Tim Walz, too weird, too radical.
Beautiful. And I reckon this could well kill her chances of gaining the presidency because, you know, all the polling and all the momentum she's gained behind her by being anyone but Biden has been all going in the right direction for her. But I think the closer you get to November and as some of that support starts to wear off, the wind that she's getting behind her now, and they can continue to run now, the Democrats, the Republicans should just run on, this is a really radical option for president and vice president. Forget about the personal attacks now. Don't go after Kamala personally because you don't have to. Just attack her and Walz on their record and what they could possibly do to America. I think it's put Trump potentially back in front again in one fell swoop.
The funny thing about that ad about Walz being weird is that one of the reasons the Democrats really liked Walz is apparently he was the one who came up with the idea of calling J.D. Vance weird, which all the Democrats have embraced. It's gone right through mainstream media. So he came up with the term weird for Vance. Now it's been turned around and used on him because he is so extreme. And you're right, Trump doesn't need to exaggerate how bad he is. They don't need to be hysterical. Leave that for Kamala. They simply need to point out his record, which, as we said, is extremely left-leaning.
And even prior to entering politics, this guy, when he ran for governor in 2018, he'd previously served in the military. So, of course, they always lean on that. I'm such a patriot. I served in the ministry. He wants to serve in the ministry, and now he gets to. But the Minnesota National Guard leaders in 2018 then wrote a letter and paid for it to be published in the state rag so that everyone could read that this guy was a liar. He had lied about his rank. He'd quit everything that he'd signed up to. Normally, if you sign up for service, there's a certain amount of years they're supposed to get out of you so that the taxpayer's investment in training you up, sending you here and there, putting a house, giving you a house to live in, etc. and so on, while you're being trained, well, then you're in the military for a certain amount of time, so everyone gets their money's worth out of you, basically. This guy didn't finish a single thing, and not only that, when he found out his unit was going to be deployed to Iraq, he quit. He quit and left his whole unit hanging because he'd been given an honorary. The leaders made it very clear in their letter he never earned this position, but he did hold a rather senior rank. So he pulls the plug. His whole unit is just like, okay, we've got no leader and we're supposed to be going to Iraq. Like, this guy, if all the Trump campaign does is focus on that, this guy is a deserter. He doesn't finish what he started. He didn't serve our country with distinction. That alone is enough to get every patriot in America to just be like, this guy is the scum of the earth. Who does that? And especially given how much the Trump camp really revere their military, really look after their military. And the Biden administration already has a terrible record here. We've heard from veterans' families who have lost someone overseas. We didn't get a phone call. I was there alone receiving his body back into the country. He wasn't honoured by anyone.
Biden
I still haven't even heard from this administration.
A single troop under his presidency.
Yeah. Right? Meanwhile, those that he does speak to, he claims that he lost his son, Beau, also while he was away in deployment. Beau tragically died of cancer, but of course, Biden's either unaware of that or lying. So that alone is just such a fun fact for the Trump campaign to run with and just be like, this bloke's a joke.
I mean, you compare that with J.D. Vance, who served with distinction in Iraq. So the debate between the two potential VPs is going to be very interesting to watch because J.D. Vance won't take it back.